Hello and welcome to Design Sky. I'm Luigi and today we're gonna talk about dielines. We're gonna demystify dielines and hopefully by the end of the video you're gonna be a dieline expert, a dieline maestro, a dieline chief engineer. Dielines are somewhat kind of forgotten in the design process, even though you shouldn't forget them. And they're forgotten because they're not really part of the design process. There are some companies out there that believe that you should pay for dielines. They have these dieline generators and you could generate any dieline just by inputting the measurements there, and I am here to tell you that no, you don't. You don't have to pay for none of that because they're very easy to make. In fact, any dieline will take around 45 minutes to an hour to make if you're making it from scratch, and if you're resizing a dieline, it's just 15 minutes the most. So what would you need to learn how to do dielines? First, you need the package that you want to recreate. Or if you just want to learn how to make dielines and don't have a package in mind, then get any package that you like. But for me, I like this package. This is a very neato package that I got surprisingly from Amazon, I think, and the way it was packaged surprised me. It opens nicely and it has these things inside. So today we're gonna remake this, and all you need is a pencil or a pen, a ruler, package, and in some cases if you have a caliper. I recommend calipers, but let's just follow me into the process. So here you have your package, and unfortunately to make this process you're going to have to tear the package open like so. Once your package is teared open, all you're gonna want to do is measure each individual panel. Dielines generally come in two different ways. One way, which is this, is a score line, and then the edge of the package is the actual dieline, but both of them are called dielines. And all you want to do is measure every part of your package like so. Okay, so here we are inside of Illustrator. This is your basic artboard, 8.5 by 11, no changes, CMYK, and 300 PPI. So here we have the measurements we took of the package that we opened up. The more measurements you have, the easier it is going to be for you to make your dieline. I took the smallest amount of measurements that I can, because I will show you tips and tricks along the way. So to get started, we're gonna start here with your rectangle tool and just double click or one click. And we're gonna make the first square, which is the first rectangle, which is 54.5, oops, not 64, 54.5 and 147.7 millimeters. Make sure you type everything in millimeters. You're gonna want to use millimeters every time that you're sending your package overseas. They work in metric units over there, and unless you're doing the package just for a factory here in the US, you should be working in millimeters. So we have the first the first rectangle, which is this one. And now we're gonna go on to this one. So for this next one, it's a repeat, but with a different width. So let me just enter the width, 18.3, and press millimeters. because if you have your Illustrator in default in inches, it's going to turn every time you enter the dimension as default in inches. So you just want to make sure that you make that correction as you're entering the numbers. There we go. You have the second part of your die line. And we're gonna do this so on and so forth. You could just also just copy the part and modify it if you know what you're doing. So for example, this is the width of that part, and I'm looking for 11.2 millimeters. You could do it up here too, and it'll do it. It'll modify it for you. So the more measurements you have, the easier this is gonna be. And this is basically how you do a die line. You just copy the measurements you see on the actual die line that you've done before, and you pass them on to your Illustrator. That's the first part, okay? So I'll do this quickly so you can get the idea of the second part of how to make your die line.
Five minutes later.
Okay, so here's shortcut number 1. Once you have your top part that you're gonna want, you don't have to make the bottom part from scratch, since it's gonna be the same package. If that's your package, what your package looks like, all you have to do is grab it and flip it. So
Fatality.
So you check and see that there is nothing missing on your die line before you move into the next part. This is your basic die line. This is the most minimum thing you could get away with. And I say the most minimum thing you could get away with because you can actually get away with this if you send it overseas and you just do like a killer artwork on this. The designers over there, the die lines makers, they're experts, and they will be able to fix your die line if you have any errors, or I mean, they know that you're not gonna cut here or here or here, but since this video is aimed to making you a professional, we're not gonna leave it here, even though that sometimes you're gonna come across some die lines that you see like this. I'm missing this little thing here. I just noticed. Let me do it really quick before I move on. Okay, back to reality. Like I said, this is the most minimum amount of work you could do on the die line. Aside from adding measurements to this, you could already get away with this if you add your artwork right below. But you are a professional now. You're going to learn how to do die lines professionally. And the easiest way to do it that I know of is to add in a second die line layer. Let's add a second die line layer. You see, because we had to recreate this die line. This was what we did right now, was to get all the measurements that we need. We have all the measurements that we need on the artboard. Now we're gonna use those measurements to make the real die line, okay? And what you're gonna want to do is grab this layer, move the opacity down to where you could just barely see it, like so, and start making your die line for real. And the reason this is not a for real die line is because we didn't put where the package quote unquote bends. You know, manufacturers know where it bends. Most people know where it bends, but this is how you do it standardly. Okay. You want to create a dash line. Let's just go 4 points. And you're going to want to put everywhere that the package is gonna bend. So anywhere the die line is going to score, you're going to add a dash line, like so. Dash line, dash line. Try to be right over it, right over your measurements. That way nothing gets wrong. All you're doing is copying the next one. And that's it. So I'm going to recreate this whole thing using the pen tool, using the little tools. But that's basically what I'm going to do. I'm going to draw over it. And I'm only going to use lines. And since I have my measurements behind it, it's going to be very fast for me to do this. This might be the most difficult part that you'll do, the little cuts on the side, but just remember, wherever there's a cut, there's a solid line. And wherever there is a bend, there's a dash line. I mean, don't be afraid to use the tools that you have at your disposition to make this easy, to make this process easier for you. So I'll be back once I'm done. Okay, so I did a little bit of adjustment there at the end because I had forgotten this little dip, but there you go. Now you have your real finished die line. This is a real deal. This is the one you were gonna want to baby. Okay, so after you have this masterpiece, the one thing you're gonna want to do is make a bleed. And where you make the bleed is not in the die line. That's not where it goes. Your bleed goes in the artwork. Okay. And the easiest way to do it is just to be very generous. In school, they teach you that the US requires 0.25 inches of bleed, and that in countries like Japan, it only requires 0.16 inches of bleed. I mean, 1/16 of an inch of bleed. And all of that is bull. In reality, the printer is going to grab your bleed and stretch the heck out of it, maybe 2, 3, or 4 inches over. So no matter how much bleed you add to your die line, it's not going to be enough. So you're not gonna prep your die line for production. The printer is going to prep your die line for production. You are going to concentrate on the artwork and the way you want things to look like. So The best thing you could do is just add a 0.25 inch all around the die line of bleed. I do it this way. Once you have your die line, you're just generous with the squares you want. We'll try to make it pretty. Also, let's not, just because we can doesn't mean we should. We're gonna try to beautify this thing a little bit. You know, just kind of, I just kind of follow the silhouette of the die line without being too obvious that I'm not measuring, since it's never enough anyway. Like so. Oops. I'm just freehanding this. Oops. So once you've done your basic squares on the artwork layer, select them all and then merge them. Once merged, you just finish up by getting closer to your die line wherever is pertinent, and also doing the curves, just because if you're sloppy with the way your bleed looks, the package, whatever you're designing, it's not gonna look as nice. So you always want to be, you know, as professional as you can, without overdoing it, of course, because you could spend a lot of time measuring this thing when it's not even going to count. So that's how you make that's how you make your bleed. But we don't need the bleed, so let's say that we're gonna make a, what color package? An aqua package? Nah, that looks ugly. A light blue, a gray package. How about black? Let's make it black. Once you fill in your bleed, you don't need that blue line. Just get rid of it. Looks nice. And the very last step that you're going to want to make is use this tool here. This tool, it's amazing. I love it. Here's my settings. Pause the video so that you can do the same if you want. And what this does is measure what you made. Just take it out like that. You don't have to be redundant in your measurements. Just put the measurements where they matter, what really matters for it. You could also just do it. I mean, this tool is really fun to use, so you could just do everything. Oops. And one of the cool things about this tool is that it makes it an additional layer all automatically. And now you have all the measurements that you'll need. You could turn it on and off, but that's it. One last thing. So whenever you're making a hole on the package. For example, remember this package has a little window here. You're going to want to do it like this. And all the packages that I've done, I've only had one factory ask me to make this hole black. Everybody else understands that this is a hole when you make it white. Okay, so that's all you need to know about dielines. After you start doing this and after you start getting the hang of it, you're not even going to need to take the picture of it. You could just measure as you go, or once you get really good, you could do this without measuring. I mean, you're gonna have to measure, but what I mean is you can make your own package from scratch. Whatever it is that your mind imagines you could do, but this is how you do it. This is the easiest and fastest way to do it. So before I go, I wanted to show you or share with you this website where I have free resources for graphic designers. You just go here, I'll link the link down below, but here I have some of the resources that I found most useful. They are 100% fully free for graphic designers. Color pickers, image optimization, which is peak software, and it's all free. You could just visit the link down below and check it out for yourself.